This video is sponsored by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
I didn't realize how irreversibly changed I had been by foldable smartphones until one of them broke on me.
As I covered back in April, the screen on my Galaxy Z Fold 2 spontaneously spawned some cracks at the crease, their jagged edges reminding me with each swipe how precarious my formerly stalwart 7-month-old daily driver had suddenly become. To its credit, Samsung repaired my phone at no cost, with a minimum of fuss. A quick couple calls and a trip to the UPS store got me a fully fixed Fold 2 returned in 1 week. And while I worry that a similar failure might befall my Fold 3, for reasons we'll talk about, that whole experience ultimately only reinforced my commitment to foldables. Each of the 7 days I was without my Fold 2 felt less productive and more frustrating because I genuinely couldn't do as much on a conventional phone. The Galaxy Z Fold 3 only adds more features to Samsung's foldable family, and it does so for $200 less than last year. That makes it my next daily driver, and it also makes it my new recommendation for anyone who wants to get the absolute most out of a mobile phone.
Now, to show you why, I've taken my review notes, blended them with content captured on the Fold 3's 5 cameras, and created a kind of supercut of a typical day on the Galaxy Fold 3. Ups and downs alike. But first, as my buddy David Kogan would say,
Copy, check.
check.
I post up at my Brooklyn caffeine dealer of choice, an unpretentious little joint where the coffee is strong, the plants are named after the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and the foxes are odd. Although I have my MacBook with me, I don't feel forced to use it, because the Fold's 7.6-inch display offers enough area that I don't feel confined as I would on a normal phone. It's easier to see everything. Not just the obvious stuff like Kindle books, but those times when someone will send you a spreadsheet, or a PDF, or a scanned page from an old magazine. Those are possible to view on a conventional phone, sure, but only actually enjoyable on something like the Fold. And if you work in my business, all the added acreage also helps you keep an eye on the competition, and also what my editors abroad have laid out for me overnight. While the big loud speakers let me hear it better than any other phone, too. I've got a meeting to hit in the city, so I take my coffee to go, and on the way I'll show you why I think the cover screen is just as important, because it's better for one-handed tasks. On my way down to the ferry dock in the cash-soaked Gen Z Carnival of North Williamsburg, I can buy my boat tickets before I get there, pause on the way to shoot a quick flex mode selfie to blend in with the natives, and despite the sun's truly brutal August assault this year, both I and the ferry lady can see the screen.
Thank you very much.
Because it's 25% brighter than last year's. Quick aside, no, I don't wish it were wider, because then it wouldn't be as usable one-handed. And Samsung also brought the added brightness to the main screen. Thanks in part to a new polarizer that carries an ancillary advantage, it's much easier to see through sunglasses than last year's Fold. Now, lest you think this is just going to be a laundry list of plus sides, let's call out the thing you've probably noticed already. The crease. Normally it wouldn't bother me, but it's a little more apparent this year to my eye. Maybe thanks to the changes made to accommodate the S Pen stylus I'll talk about in a minute. While it's still invisible head-on, it takes a much smaller angle adjustment to become noticeable. I'm not saying you don't get used to it. I'm just saying it would be nice if you didn't have to.
As the saying goes, there's no better way to experience NYC than in the company of a more fit friend. So I let my Windows Central buddy Daniel Rubino choose the lunch venue, and as a result, we're going for sushi. Look at this thin fella just hanging out, waiting for me outside the establishment. How you doing, buddy?
Chilling like a villain.
Good to see you.
Just kidding.
We're getting burgers.
See, I talked you up like we were going to eat healthy, but apparently that ain't the case. Sushi, Wagyu beef burgers, whatever the case, the briefing we attended afterward was full of things I'm not allowed to show you yet. But what I can show you is what folks like me have to sign to attend those briefings. An endless onslaught of NDAs and embargo agreements that are made much easier by the addition of an S Pen. Or they would be if I had anywhere to put the thing. Folks, I respect the legacy of the smartphone stylus. I've been using them since my Palm Centro was new in the box. I even made it something of a tradition to renew my apartment lease on Samsung's Galaxy Note each year. But the Note, the Centro, and the Trios and Clies before them, they all gave the stylus a place to live. The Fold 3 has no such silo, unless you spring for the leather case that, like the pen itself, is sold separately. It's also more limited here. It doesn't work on the cover display, so the quick memo feature is much less convenient than it was on the Note. Also, as reported by The Verge, the Digitizer that makes the pen work is actually 2 panels with a gap to accommodate the crease. And while the algorithm that fills in pen strokes between that gap is clever, it's tripped up once or twice in my testing. I've enjoyed doing the occasional doodle, and really I think the biggest win here is that even after a few days of use, there's no sign of wear on the display's new screen protector, which also feels much closer to glass under the finger. But on the whole, this S Pen feels more like an afterthought than the integrated, indispensable value add it was on the Galaxy Note.
The Fold's principal advantage really continues to be its added display area, which gave me, well, kind of a stupid idea.
It started when I dropped the Fold 3 onto my Quirky Writer Bluetooth keyboard for a low-effort Twitter gag, and then found myself wondering what a real ultra-portable productivity setup might look like. So I overnighted a well-rated foldable keyboard, dusted off my Microsoft Arc mouse and Lamicall phone stand, and found myself with a combo I'm calling the 4-pocket laptop.
I'm so happy to be able to say I impressed Windows Central's Dan Rubino. You gonna replace your laptop? You gonna replace your Windows PC with my new thing?
But it does look fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun for short periods of time.
Now don't get me wrong, I do not recommend this. Android on a keyboard and mouse is usable, yeah, but it's hardly optimized for them. And if you're thinking that I could do this with any modern Android phone, you're right. But I would never think of doing this with another phone, because the Fold offers 4 times the deployed display area as conventional devices. And so even if you rightly don't use it for this purpose, it is much more useful if you need it to, say, serve as a second monitor for your Mac or PC. Let's talk about what helps sell the size of that canvas. If you recall my first impressions video, I thought it was a mistake for Samsung to compromise the inner selfie camera in exchange for this relatively poor camouflage job. But 2 weeks of not having a hole punch have reversed my opinion on that. The inner camera is not good, especially not for selfies, but it is serviceable for its intended use as a video call webcam, a feature just as well suited to the Fold 3 as the Flip 3, thanks to Samsung's Flex Mode. Maybe next year, Samsung will be able to upgrade to whatever cloaking device ZTE installed in its new Axon 30, which really puts the Fold to shame in terms of how well it hides its own selfie shooter. For proper selfies, the Fold 3 cover camera remains in place, and it's plenty capable for the task of bidding goodbye to the Boston-bound Beano. Speaking of goodbyes, a quick cure for the summer steam bath of Manhattan is a sunset boat ride back to Brooklyn. I'm going to snag just a few more camera samples on the way so we can talk about those and battery life and beyond right after this.
I'm gonna level with you. It's been a pretty stressful past few weeks for reasons professional, personal, you name it. Maybe you can relate.
In the middle of a rough patch like that, usually all I want to do is call out for delivery and vegetate in front of the TV. But when I think about how much I'm spending on that takeout and how unhealthy it is, it tends to make me feel worse than I already did. Enter a sponsor you've come to know and I've come to love, HelloFresh. It's more than just fresh ingredients delivered to your door. It's a way to do dinner that gets you off the couch and into the kitchen without being stressful or intimidating.
Well, no one ever said anything about my serving capabilities.
You'll spend about 30% less than you would to make the same meals with groceries, and you don't have to shop, plan, or prep. You just follow directions. And in less than an hour, you end up with something truly delicious, whether you go traditional, low-cal, carb-smart, veggie, or pescatarian. HelloFresh even made me enjoy mushrooms, which is something I've never been able to say before in my life. And if you're really pressed for time, there's quick meal options like 20-minute dinners or oven-ready pizzas, too.
Hey, look, I know it sounds sappy, but each time I cook with HelloFresh, I feel a little bit better as a person. And that's pretty cool.
So do what I did. Become a customer. Go to HelloFresh.com and use code MrMobile14 to get 14 free meals, plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com and use code MrMobile14 to get 14 free meals, plus free shipping. Thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video.
Okay, you've heard it over and over from tech reviewers for the past few weeks, myself included. Samsung recycled the Fold 2's cameras for the Fold 3, and that's kind of a shame. Is it?
My initial reflexive disappointment came from my hope that Samsung would somehow bring that zoom camera from its 21 Ultra to the Fold, something there just isn't room for in this chassis. But what is here is a collection of cameras that I have no trouble recommending. The differences between the Fold 3 and the top-of-the-line iPhone often coming down to personal preference, if you can discern them at all. If Apple has an edge here, besides the fact that it's about to launch a new iPhone in like a month, it's in consistency and reliability. In challenging setups like this one, the iPhone produced a photo much closer to reality, and the same goes for this similar video clip. It's samples like these that help explain why the iPhone remains my go-to for on-the-go B-roll, and it stays cooler than the Fold while filming to boot. Really, the only consistent disappointment I could generate from the Fold 3's cameras were in night mode. The Fold 3 just seems much more susceptible to hand movement in extreme low-light situations. An issue that is thankfully minimized by the inclusion of a built-in tripod in the form of flex mode. Alright, now how about the battery, which is slightly smaller than last year's? Well, on a day like today, relentlessly hammering the camera more than any user ever would, in between bouts of forcing the phone into service as a 4-pocket laptop, yeah, it dipped below the double digits in a little less than 9 hours. On more typical days, getting to bedtime is no problem. I even at one point used mobile hotspot continuously for 7 hours, and I still had 32% left in the tank when I wrapped up. The only way I could kill this thing faster would be to spend a day on wireless DeX, the feature that lets you use the phone through a computer-like UI on a TV or external monitor. But as much fun as DeX is to play with, I found I didn't really need to use it much. I mean, when it's in your hand, the Fold 3's screen is big enough, and it's better leveraged by the software this year, with more apps taking smarter advantage of the canvas with multiple columns. Oh, and I love the option to keep a persistent taskbar pinned to the side, so I can jump between my favorite apps with one tap. And at the risk of getting into the weeds with my personal use cases, you can now force apps into the multitasking view, which means I can finally run my bank and credit card apps side by side with a floating calculator up top. Something I've wanted to do since the first Fold came out. When you tally it all up, there's a lot more working in the Fold 3's favor than against it. And I didn't even have a chance to talk about the new IPX8 water resistance, or the same Armor Aluminum and Gorilla Glass Victus combo that's kept my Z Flip 3 in mint condition, despite a few falls. The only concern I have is with that other glass, the ultra-thin type that makes up the display. According to what Samsung told me, it's the same UTG material as last year underneath that 80% stronger top plastic layer, meaning it, too, might someday start cracking without warning due to fatigue or whatever it is that takes this material to its breaking point.
So, just as I've done for every Samsung foldable thus far, I bought my own Fold 3, and I'll be using it as my daily driver for every weekday from here on out. If it fails, you'll be the first to know it, assuming you're subscribed to the channel.
If Samsung were charging more for the Fold 3 than the 2, I would feel much more strongly about the compromises I've called out. But with this installment, the Fold is nearly 200 clams cheaper than it's ever been, and that's not even counting the trade-in offers. You can and should use that savings to consider investing in Samsung Care Plus for added peace of mind. If you already own a Fold 2, you don't need to buy this one. But if you've spent the past few years on a phone that's been feeling a little cramped, or you've been carrying a phone and a tablet and itching to shed one of them, well, tell them, Romulan Ambassador.
There will never be a better time.
The Galaxy Z Fold 3 is on sale now. This review was produced following 2 weeks with the Galaxy Z Fold 3 review sample provided by Samsung. But, as always, Samsung had no editorial input into this video, it was given no early preview of it, and it provided no compensation in exchange for its production. Please subscribe to the Mr. Mobile on YouTube if that's the kind of video you'd like to see more of. Until next time, thanks for watching, and stay mobile, my friends.